Anchorage School Board. Today is Monday, October 9th, 2017. All board members are present with the exception of Starr Marsett, who is with us telephonically. I'd like to ask Ms. Snelling to lead us in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For our safety moment tonight, I want to make sure all those who are present know that we have restrooms at the far end of the hall, directly across the atrium. There's an automated electronic defibrillator, an AED, located across the hall in a white box, and a first aid kit is mounted by the wall by the second exit. We do not conduct evacuation drills during our meetings, so if an alarm sounds, this is for real, or if an alert is announced, please begin to take safe action immediately. In the event we have to evacuate this building, there are 4 exit doors located on my left or your right, and all will have a lit exit sign over them. Once you enter the atrium, proceed quickly along the safest route to a door leading out of the building. If you do not have a vehicle here, or it is unsafe to enter your vehicle and you need a place to wait for help, we have designated the parking lot next to the gas station as our rally point. If you see something that is dangerous, we encourage you to speak up and clearly alert the room of the danger you see. And we encourage everyone to begin quickly taking safe action. Information will be provided throughout the event as available, so everyone can best decide the safest action to take given the current situation. For today's special safety topic, I think many of you are aware that on October 19th, at 10:19 a.m., Alaska will be participating in the Great Alaskan Shakeout with folks from around the country. And so I want to speak just briefly about emergency kits. As a survivor of the 1964 earthquake in Turnagain, this has a special meaning to me. And I've always been very safety conscious and very much annoying my husband with all the items that we have to have in our emergency kit. By the front door, there's a 2-page guide so that if you have not yet begun to put together an emergency kit for yourself or your family or friends, this tells you a step-by-step process that you can do so. It addresses food storage, water storage and purification, generators and indoor heaters, and such. And it breaks it out over 12 weeks so that it can be something you do step by step. Or if you want to do it all at once, that's also not a bad idea. So I hope you'll take a look at this. And is there anything else that you just pointing them out over there on the table? And please be prepared. Another item that we're instituting at the board is our Koyana moment. And this, if you aren't aware with the expression Koyana, it's a Central Yupik word for thank you. And it's the name of our site-based award of appreciation. Awards can be given to any employee or volunteer in recognition of achievement, service, or dedication. Kianas can be viewed or submitted by filling out an online Kayana form through the ASD website. One Kayana will be randomly selected from the website to be highlighted at bi-monthly board meetings. So the one that our communications department selected for today is a Kayana to Lula Conti at Wonder Park Elementary School. A huge shout out to Lula Conti, a 3rd grade teacher at Wonder Park Elementary. Although teachers change children's lives daily, Lula has opened the ears of a student who wears hearing aids by diligently utilizing an FM system daily. When the student first heard it in use, he had the biggest smile and said, "I can hear her like she's in my head." Thank you, Lula. You are very much appreciated. And that was written by Deborah Bevier, who's a speech language pathologist. Agenda. Too many papers. At this point, I'd like to have our student rep up to the board do our opening statement, please.
We want to welcome you to our board meeting and thank you for attending and supporting the work of the Anchorage School District and this board. The board thanks students, parents, teachers, staff, school business partners, and the entire community for your investment in our district with your time, your talent, and your tax dollars. As partners, we will respect your time and make this meeting as effective and efficient as possible. If you are unable to be physically present for the entire meeting, you may choose to tune into the Municipality of Anchorage's Channel 9 to watch any school board meeting. Meetings are also streamed live and available on demand via the ASD website. Recordings of meetings are available on YouTube through the agenda. To access, find the desired meeting on board docs and click the Watch Video button. Recordings are time-stamped to the agenda for easy access and closed captioned in compliance with Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. The primary purpose of the regular business meeting of the Anchorage School Board is to recognize excellence, receive reports, approve policies and contracts, as well as decide on the rules and processes followed by the board to facilitate orderly decision-making. The role is to govern, not to solve management issues. My name is Kaylee Spencer, and I'm the student representative to the board. I was elected to serve through the ASD Student Advisory Board. Although my votes are only advisory, I offer student voice to this body.
Thank you very much, Kaylee. Now I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or changes?
I would move to amend the agenda to add item ASD memorandum number 62 to the non-action item list.
64?
64, sorry.
To non-action items. Is there any dissent?
I'll second that if it needs one.
If you moved, it's been seconded? Okay, could you vote on the amended agenda, please? Do we do this online? We'll do this via voice vote.
Sure. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Starr?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And now we need to vote on the original motion for approval of the agenda as amended. Another voice vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Starr?
Yes.
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 Thank you. The agenda is approved as is. We go into our public testimony on non-agenda and non-action items at this point, and I do have a list of people who've signed up to speak. Before we begin, I'd like to make this statement. We welcome public comments on agenda items, both action and non-action, as well as in general. We value public comments as it both ensures that we remain aware of public thoughts, ideas, and concerns, and it informs our decision-making process. We have a table front and center with 2 seats and microphones available for testimony when I call your name. You have 3 minutes to testify, and you may begin speaking when the timer appears on the screen to your left and begins the countdown. When you have 30 seconds left, the number will turn yellow. When the timer reaches 0, please finish your sentence. Additionally, it's not our practice that board members answer questions or engage in discussion with members of the public. This is your time to speak and our time to listen. The board will consider all information shared by the public, and when deemed necessary, issues raised in testimony will be referred to the administration for follow-up. Additionally, in order to maintain the decorum of this meeting, I ask that after testimonies that you do the silent applause as opposed to verbal or clapping. Appreciate that very much. Okay, I'd like to call up, and I'll call up the first 2 people so the seats can be filled, and then I'll be filling the vacant seat every time. First 2 people on the agenda, Patty Hamry will speak first, followed by Philip Walters. You may begin.
Good evening. My name is Patty Hamry. Tonight I would like to honor my teaching friend and Yupik elder Lucy Skolnick, Unoguk Chakina. I teach 1st and 2nd grade at Campbell, and I was born and raised here in Anchorage, Alaska. Last year, the administration and Campbell staff worked very hard to create Anchorage's first elementary STEM school. Our learning community will focus on science, technology, engineering, and math. In March this year, I spent my own money to attend the National Science Teachers Convention of America. 10,000 K-12 educators gathered to learn about education in Finland, Israel, China, France, England, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. I wish everybody in this room could go to NSTA. Tonight I would like to talk to you about PLCs, professional learning communities, and how they impact teaching and learning at Campbell and other schools. And my question to you is, what is best practice? My AEA contract, or rather non-contract, allows Anchorage teachers 4 hours a week that is called planning time. At Campbell, we have 3 hours of planning time. The 4th hour is spent in a mandatory weekly PLC roundtable meeting attended by our 2 SPED teachers, ELL teacher, Indian Ed teacher, ELL and Indian Ed tutors, instructional coach, all classroom teachers at our grade level team, and our principal. To be exact, our Campbell PLC model, K1, has had 11 educators together for 1 hour every week since the first week of school, and all grade level teams participate every week. Our norms limit our discussion to student data and student concerns, specifically student scores from Ames Web reading fluency assessments were generated earlier this year for 3 one-minute electronic probes. We agree that one session with the extended team can help identify children who aren't meeting the standard of growth. However, this data is limited and doesn't help the educator or the child's family figure out what the child knows or doesn't know and how to best meet his or her needs. This PLC model has created stress on the Campbell staff throughout all grade levels. We have only 3 hours of planning, not enough time to read and prep the new Cengage literacy lesson and also read the new Amplify lesson and prep Go Math, in my case, 2, 1st and 2nd grade. We are teaching and assessing, prepping for what's to come today and next week, and we don't have time, any time. To say that we are stressed out every day is true. So I would ask that if you want Alaskans' children to grow and retain our children, that teachers need time. The time for academic discourse with our peers and time for critical thinking and creativity. I would ask if you agree with this and that you would like to restore our planning to 4 hours, please stand. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Karen Lofer-Quinteri, can you please come forward to fill the vacant seat? Philip, we have the timer. 1 sec. Okay, you may begin.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Bishop, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Again. I emphasize the word again because we are still here, and it doesn't seem like we've gotten anywhere. It seems that the district is perfectly fine with maintaining the status quo. We, the educators in the schools, are most decidedly not okay with the way things are. A month ago, we had over 100 AEA members show up to air our frustration at beginning a school year with more students, less teachers, more programs, less time, more testing, and no new contract. 2 weeks ago, we showed up again with 400 members plus friends and family. I come before you again tonight. We will be back again and again and again until it is evident that we are being taken seriously as the professionals on the front lines, until the conditions in our classes have improved, until our students are able to get the education they deserve, until we have a fair contract. I will be blunt. I was astounded by a quote from our superintendent in the Alaska Dispatch News a few weeks ago when talking about the increases to leadership teams' salaries, defending pay raises of 20%, 30%, by saying that, and I quote, "Some folks wouldn't come here with the experience I needed because they could make more money elsewhere. I had to compete with the best." Another quote from the same interview. "When I looked at my team here, I knew I needed to get the right people and keep the right people." While I certainly appreciate the need to have the right people in leadership positions in the district, is it not just as important to get and keep the right people in the classrooms working with our students? How will you get the right people? In my school, we have several full-time teaching positions being filled by long-term subs who have been hired for the entire year. I guess it's significantly cheaper for the district than hiring a certificated teacher who would require a salary and benefits, but is it fair to the students? How will we fill 46 vacant teaching positions? Will we attract them by offering them a job, letting them experience their first year of teaching, which is universally understood to be hell on earth regardless of how prepared you are, and then hand them a pink slip on the last day of school? How will you keep the right people? Will you keep us by once again asking us to do more with less? Will you keep us by forcing us to begin our year 2 days earlier to train in a program that the district paid for while crying budgetary wolf? Will you keep us by expecting us to come in earlier, to stay later, to work longer hours to keep up with grading more students, testing more often, implementing additional programs, while offering us nothing? Because that is what a 0% raise for 3 years is. I'm a music guy, and math really isn't my thing, but I know what 0% is. 0% is nothing. Actually, 0 is a pay cut when you factor in inflation and ridiculous cost of healthcare. The 3% we're asking for won't even actually keep up with inflation, which averages 3.22% every year nationally. But it's better than 0. 0 is a slap in the face. 0 shouldn't even have a seat at the table. We came to you before, we are here again. We'll be back again and again for as long as it takes. I would assert, and I certainly hope that you would agree, that as you look at this room of people clad in purple, you already have the right people right here, right now, and you need to do right by them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Heather Probasco, please come forward. Karen, you may begin. Wait, one sec, sorry.
And this is off agenda.
That's fine.
Madam President, thank you. My name is Karen Leffler-Quintieri. I am a parent of a child at Turnagain Elementary. I'm realizing I am an Alaskan transplant now of a score. I have been here for 20 years. And Kaylee, I sat in your position back when I was in high school. Back in the mid-60s, I did start kindergarten. I started a school with 800 students. My mom was a teacher in the district. My dad was a principal in that district, both very passionate individuals. So I understand that whole concept of teachers, administrators. I've actually sat on a school board. I now have children that are spread out between 39 years old and a 10-year-old. So again, I've seen a lot of different changes and a lot of things come and go. My concerns today, what I bring, is the success of our students in the world language programs. The changes in the programming staffing and the changes in that programming just in the last 5 years have resulted in the current combo class for my daughter of a 5th and 6th, totaling 62 students. Because we have lost our students, we have one teacher that has to learn both the 5th grade curriculum and the 6th grade curriculum with minimum amount of time in which to teach that curriculum. We have lost 2 Russian teachers without the replacement, though our numbers have remained constant. We have lost teachers in our neighborhood side, and those too have not been replaced. With all of the specials, pullouts, and mandated curriculum, our poor immersion teachers simply do not have adequate time to teach 32 students to even answer a simple question. With the new implementation of the Nat Geo reading program, that's supposed to be 130 minutes. I know there is a reduced methodology for that teaching. Our teachers get 18 to 20 minutes. That includes with our Go Math and our reading side. Our teachers are bound. They do not have the adequate help. They are bound because they have to teach mandated curriculum, so some flexibility possibly in the curriculum in the world language program would be great to be seen. But more than anything else, we need to see staffing return to the level for which it was started. We had great success. We graduated our very first class. We've got kids going on to 4-year universities. If we want to maintain those same levels, we need to put the program back to where it was started and the staffing for which it was. It's a great program. Let's let it continue. We need that staffing back. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Elise Galvin, could you please come and fill the vacant seat? Heather, wait.
My school of choice is the Russian Immersion program at Turnagain Elementary. My family has been commuting for 14 years to get to the zone to have a second language integrated into our school day. As a parent, deciding to drive my students every day and becoming part of a pioneering approach to learning has been one of the best decisions I could have made for my family. The best explanation I can give for the community that this program has given to my kids is family. These kids start out with kindergarten with the same group they are intended to graduate high school with. The daily interactions our students make is strong and is a hard dynamic for any new teacher to break ice with. Large class sizes are competing with our teachers to make the classroom unsafe and an unenjoyable place to learn a foreign language. Many students tend to learn rather than adapt, Many students tend to learn how to adapt rather than to learn a new skill, thus tuning out the teacher and becoming disengaged and disruptive. In the Russian Immersion language program, the students spend half the day in English learning math and language arts. The other half of the day is spent with a native Russian-speaking teacher for science and social studies. In order for our students to be exposed to Russian for half the day, it takes sacrifices. This includes shortening the class instructional time from a normal 90 minutes in a neighborhood class to a mere 60. This means Russian immersion students receive 30 minutes less time every day to be explained thoroughly and not enough time for manipulative options to be brought out with the curriculum. Until the last 2 years, I've been satisfied with how the challenges of a lack of funding and teacher placements have affected my program of choice. Last year, we have seen teachers leave our program and not replaced, that we are now facing combo classes of 32 and 31 students. When you set out to do a math lesson for our program with 60 minutes of math to explain to 32 students, that does not leave much time to answer questions or give adequate individual explanations if your student or a concept is misunderstood. That's 60 minutes for science, 32 students. 60 minutes for language arts, 32 students. The same goes for social studies, 60 minutes, 32 students. The formula is far worse when you consider the biggest factor of behavior. I'm not happy with this ratio, and I do not believe it's best practice to learn a foreign language or any subject at the elementary level. Rather than blaming it on flat funding, please reconsider. Our program numbers continue to be stable. Our families are continuing to enroll. I have one immediate request, and I will be following up on it. Please send additional support to our teachers in the Russian Immersion program. We need some teacher partnerships to continue this great program. We have overcrowding. My daughter came home. I asked her if she could have the teacher tell her where the basket was. She said, my teacher said in a minute, and she never found her minute to help my daughter get to turn in her paperwork. That's my one big request. My second request is to follow up with the World Language Program. We need an advisory committee with the school board. Better counsel would help with the changing curriculum and attrition rates. Maybe a teacher shortage in specialty areas can be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I'd like to call up Allison Stengel. Ms. Galvin.
Good evening, and thank you all for all of your public service. I really deeply appreciate it. Thank you to the administration for your openness and willingness to hear us. I want to appreciate that you're in a tough spot. You're in a very tough spot. I didn't know that you'd have a room like this when I signed up, but clearly there's a lot of people who are very concerned, and I guess I'd like to offer a vision of pulling together and think about how we might, how that might look. Earlier today I was lucky enough to hear the work session about the Capturing Kids' Hearts. That's a wonderful program. I know that we've had SEL with similar ideas for over 20 years with Linda Lantieri and some great work in the elementary classrooms, and it's been fantastic. What we have been missing there is that vision of ensuring a systemic way for it to be for every child. Similarly, I see we have it in pieces of the high schools. We don't have it everywhere. In some high schools, like the one where my child is, we're lucky to have 30 years worth of this sort of relationship building and mutual respect that's just a culture there at Stellar Secondary, and that's great. And I love that we're thinking of ways to systemically open minds and grow new ways of thinking. But again, I think what we really want is for every child to experience this, and that's going to take all of us pulling together and figuring out a way to do that. I think that it's not just the schools with language immersion classes. I think we're going to hear that we have the same issues in Mountain View, same issues at Tudor Elementary, everywhere. We have class sizes that are too large to function, and we need to grow that thinking together. How can we make a plan together? And that brings me to why I'm really here, which is to talk about LEDGE priorities. I'm concerned that the priority list that I saw included having to rework the formula. I think it's an idea out there that needs to be done eventually. It's a 3-year project, most legislators say. And the chair of finance has said, that Senate Finance, I will not touch that this year. So we know that. My worry is that if we single out this as being our solution, we're going to have a problem with regard to us all coming together and floating every boat. I know as a member of Great Alaska Schools, we will not support this kind of an initiative that does not float all boats for all kids in every district in the state of Alaska. What we would be asking for with an initiative like that is give us a bigger piece of the pie. And I don't think that's the way we want to set our discussion. I think we want to set our discussion in a way that says, look guys, we've got a problem. You've seen the growing health costs. And that's growing our education costs out of the water. We cannot function this way. So let's work together. You guys help us by giving us an amount that would include what we know would be the extra cost for this coming year. So I'm just asking you to start there with your ask of Ledge.
Thank you for your testimony. Allison is here. Pamela Lloyd, please. Allison, you may begin.
Good evening. My name is Allison Stengel, and I'm a language arts teacher and the department chair at Bettye Middle School. When we were informed about the new MTSS classes last year, we were told that primarily based on 2 MAP scores, we would be placing our at-risk students in one of 3 intervention classes depending on how they scored. I asked for the data that proved that these intervention classes would yield positive results and improvement for our students. In response, I was told that they had no way of knowing the answer to that. Therefore, without supportive data or a year of piloting a new program, our language arts curriculum changed. The new MTSS classes were implemented. Our teachers were not trained prior to the school year. The curriculum for one of the intervention classes has still, to this day, not been completed. Teachers had to begin teaching a course that doesn't even have a lesson plan for the entire year. It's like sending a doctor into surgery, telling him to start the surgery, then giving him an incomplete manual on how to perform the surgery 2 hours into it. On top of the new classes, these teachers don't have the books needed for them. 48% of our students at Bettye are in an MTSS class, and we're almost 1/4 of the way through the school year without the necessary means to teach our class. This is not best for our kids. Furthermore, the district has scheduled 1 Friday a month for each school leadership's team to meet and plan. I'm on this team. Because of our new blocking schedule, I'll be missing a total of 8 days with the same classes, which are 85 minutes each. That's 680 minutes of instruction that 3 of my classes are missing because I have to have a substitute teacher. That's not best for our kids. Enacting countless changes with no proof that the program will benefit kids is not what's best for them. Sending teachers into a school year with no training on a program is not best for kids. Demanding that teachers teach these programs without the necessary tools over 8 weeks into the school year is not best for our kids. I teach my students that sometimes in life, they're going to come across people that don't value what they have to offer. I teach them that people are going to do wrong in the world, and if they stand by and watch passively, they're allowing it. If you permit it to be done, you deserve it. I'd like to apologize to all my colleagues that I work with and I don't work with for my lack of involvement in defending our rights and work as educators for the past 4 years. I'm here to represent the teachers that can't be here as well tonight. Please don't assume that their absence means they don't share the same sentiments. Many are fulfilling the presumed duties of teaching, working at home outside of contract hours that we don't have to ensure the best education for our students. What kind of example am I setting if I encourage my students to defend what's wrong in the world and I stand back and I allow this to continue? So here I am on a Monday night, behind on grading, with no contract to defend my students, my profession, and my colleagues, even though I shouldn't have to, because my work speaks for itself. My past and present students can attest to that, but I'm here because sometimes in life people don't value what I have to offer, and sometimes people do wrong in the world, and I'm not going to permit this to be done because our kids don't deserve it, and neither do we.
Thank you very much. Jenna Walker, please. Pamela Lloyd.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. I remember when this used to be a paid holiday off. My name's Pamela Lloyd, and I'm an occupational therapist. I've been with the Anchorage School District for 26 years. I've been through contracts. I remember when there was supposed to be a lot of money, but for the good of the order, we didn't get a pay raise one year. We added an extra step into the contract. I just remember a lot of demeaning things that have happened, and a lot of good things have happened too. But I'm an occupational therapist, so I'm going to speak about my piece of the pie, which is there's 10% of us that are part of AEA, which are called related services. And there's occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language pathologists, school psychologists, and a few others. But I'm grateful for the job I have. I love my job. I love the people I work with. And I love being part of Tier 2. I love that I'm going to have a stable future for myself when I get to retire. I work with outstanding SPED teachers. I get to collaborate with them generally. I work with outstanding therapists who are brilliant and are very compassionate, and I work at a variety of schools. This year I only have 4. For a number of years I've been a mentor or an advisor, however you want to call it, to new occupational therapists, both permanent and temporary, and which is exciting. I always love teaching students. I taught for Creighton University as an adjunct professor for 5 years, and that was very rewarding also. But a lot of times we're hiring temporary people. We can't retain therapists. Even we have a 6% bonus that other people don't get, but we cannot keep people here. There's just not enough to keep therapists here. Most therapists will stay for a year. Travelers, they work through an agency. The last 2 at Golden View stayed 6 months. They were a warm body, basically. At Whaley School, one of my favorite schools, we are on our 6th speech therapist in 5 years. This last one, thankfully, is a permanent ASD employee, so that it's necessary. Our kids at Whaley take a while to bond with people, and you can't have people coming in and out every year. They just are not going to make any gains in their education. They're never going to get back to their home school if they don't have a way to communicate their frustration and what they need. It's exhausting to train these temporary people. Oh, I went fast. So I just want to say that we need to be more compassionate. We need to work together. We can't be polarized into us and them. We need to team and collaborate to give our students the best education we have. We need to take care of each other and our students with dignity and respect. This game of playing, we have no money and you are not worthy, must end. Please let's team on how to attract the best and the brightest as therapists and educators. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I'd like to call up Susan Ritter, please.
I'm left-handed. I gotta move over.
That's fine. You may begin. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Jenna Walker, and I'm a 6th grade teacher at Rogers Park Elementary School. Before that, I taught at Central Middle School for 12 years. I started at Central in October of 2000 while going to UAA to get my master's. I was displaced from middle school in the spring of 2012, and I didn't think things could feel any more negative than they did then. The transition to elementary wasn't easy, but now I've got a fantastic teaching partner, a wonderful principal, great colleagues, fun kids, and a building that's finally getting a new roof this summer. I love teaching, I love working with kids, and the reason I teach is the kids. I have my classroom open every day for lunch and recess, so kids who just like the chaos of the cafeteria have a quiet place to eat, relax, visit, and get help with work. That means I do choose to give out my duty-free lunch, and I do it because I was one of those kids in school. I often get kids from other classes who want to come in. In 2015, I had a really tough kid. You know that old saying, if he ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. One day I noticed the soles of his shoes were flapping. That night I went to Fred Meyer and bought him 2 new pairs of shoes to choose from. Next day I showed him and he grumbled at me. Why'd you get these for me? And I said, because you needed shoes. His life was chaotic and the only way he could cope was to never show any happiness or trust that anything was good. When he went to middle school, I made a point of finding out where he went and checked in with his counselor to see how he was doing. By the 3rd week of school, he'd already been in his 2nd middle school. I looked through my closet for household items to donate to families because of one tragedy or another. Families new to Alaska who have nothing. My husband has said to me more than once, stop giving away all our stuff. I wash and mend clothes for kids who don't have anyone at home to do it. I bring in or share food with those who are hungry. If kids have a specific interest, I look for opportunities in those areas for them. I stay up at night worrying about and praying for their future. I cry when I see a former student's name in the obituaries, especially when it's a loss due to suicide or violent crime.
Losing a young person is always terrible, but these hit me especially hard. I mourn when kids I've taught are being sought by APD or have been arrested. And then I get to rejoice when I see others in the workplace and they say, you taught me how to write a resume and how to interview for a job. I started teaching in 1998. I'm well into my career and I have a lot of experience. I could be coasting along pretty well right now, but I believe that every year I should be better. I believe my employer, my students, their families, and the community deserve and should expect me to improve my skills as I gain experience. As such, I actually work harder each year than the year before. Unfortunately, the things that are taking most of my time lately aren't things that actually improve the quality of my teaching of children. Most of them are technology or program related. And it's not so much that we're having to figure it all out on our own in bits and pieces, often by getting lucky. It's that there's so much of it that doesn't seem to have a purpose. You ask us to teach with a purpose, and we should be able to expect our tasks to have a purpose. And I kind of consider this the second year with no contract, since last year was a continuation of the previous one. I'm expecting myself to be better, holding myself to a higher standard, but last year my take-home pay was less. Everyone keeps talking about hiring and keeping the best teachers, but with the contract offer we saw, it looks like ASD isn't equating experience with best, which is sad because if you lose all the people with experience, you'll be losing many of our best. I will keep expecting myself to be better every year because that is my character and my students deserve that. It's my students who I hope will remember me, and I cut out kind of some of the good stuff.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
That made me cry, what she said. My name is Susan Ritter. Good evening, members of the school board and Dr. Bishop. I'm in my 11th year of teaching in life skills. It seems to be my niche. I've been in elementary school and now I'm in high school teaching life skills. I spoke last to this group and I expressed my gratitude for being a graduate of the Jenna Sped Gets program. My experience at that time was positive. I had a lot of support, and my concerns are that it's not happening and following through with the current program. And I received some comments from other teachers who are in the GETS program who appreciated that I made that statement. The GETS program needs support for the paperwork, for the meetings, the IEP meetings, the preparation meetings, and the support that the teachers get are just for those specific hours. So they're not getting the support in the classroom, and that's a concern. And Resource has their issues, and Life Skills has their issues. I implore that you go out and speak with the teachers to see what their needs are. I am also going to speak about something that very positive that happened to me today when I was staying till 5 o'clock, even though it was high school. I get out at 2, but I'm there at 5 because I'm doing my prep work. There's a BPO gentleman there who I asked him where he was from. He said from Thailand. I asked him where he went to school. He said he came to the States when he was 14. He is Hmong. And he asked me if I knew about the Hmong. I said, absolutely. We would have, they were very important to our engagement in Vietnam. I asked him what he did, where he started school in America, and it was in California, and then he came to Alaska. He came to Bartlett High School, and he also went to KCC. And I said, did you have a good education? He said, yes. He said high school, the teachers cared about him, they understood him, they helped him. College was tougher because the professors don't care. They're not there to sit next to you to help explain things. I bring this up because I believe you truly appreciate the quality of teaching that you have in your district. With that said, I truly appreciate the fact that you're going to consider giving us the raise that we deserve, and that we are working tirelessly for our students and looking for a balance in our income. And more than that is to hear that you appreciate and honor the work that we do. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to that 3% raise.
Thank you for your testimony. That's all I have on sign up for testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? There will be one other segment at the end of the meeting for testimony on non-action items. Please come. Please state your name and, if necessary, spell it for the record.
Caitlin Jaksic, Jaksic. I'm also a parent that drives my kids to Turnigan Elementary for the Russian Immersion program, so we are investing a lot into it. The first year with Miss Olga was phenomenal. With the Russian, I was really impressed. At that time, my kids got into Rickerschule, and we considered switching them. And we didn't because my kids loved their school, and I felt like they were getting a lot from it. As you know, our school was in construction last year, and there was basically, it was small classes, but this year, when you look at the classes, our kids in his class are basically half the class is failing at the reading. And as teachers, I can tell, I feel bad in a sense they're stressed out because not only are they having to get our kids caught up in Russian reading, but they can't even focus on their grade level because my kids split, there's not enough kids, so she has to teach third grade, 21 kids, and then she has to teach fourth grade, which I think is 31 kids, or there's 22, 31. So if you're gonna start a program, if you're gonna start a Russian immersion program, it's the first in the country. I would hope that you would give it all the support so that these kids can actually come out being successful in the language. What's the point in investing all of this if you're just gonna halfway give them what they need? You started a new program, which was the Chinese. I'm proud to say that Alaska offers the programs that it does offer, but if you're gonna start a new one, what about the existing ones you already have? I just find it kind of crazy. I want my kid to be successful, and when I brought up, to the principal, and here's the reading problems, they said we'd get an extra tutor. Well, now I found out it's not to the third grade, it's to the fourth, is what I'm told. I'm at this point gonna hire a tutor to help my kid because I can't depend on the fact that he's getting the extra help he needs or the teachers are getting the help they need. I pay taxes, we're paying into this education. And I just hope that if you really want to see the outcomes and have these kids be world leaders and speak languages, that you have invest early in early education. These are the prime years. If everything shows you invest now in our teachers, in our kids, that'll pay off later. And if we don't invest now in them and we deprive them of that because of budget cuts, or we want to invest in administration, like the school got an extra, not a teacher, a lead teacher to teach the teachers how to do one of these new curriculums. Like, what if you just gave the school an extra teacher? I look at it like we cut teachers, but then we got a new position to teach the teachers that are already overburdened to teach a curriculum that just got implemented instead of just giving them what they needed was an extra teacher. So I'm just shocked. I don't know the system like you guys do, but I really hope that you find somewhere to give the teachers and the kids and everyone else what they deserve and what they really need to be successful.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, at this point then, we're going to move on in our agenda. I see no military report tonight, but I would like to move to the superintendent for her update.
All right, on this evening's update, there was a request to speak to the initiatives and the overall board goals and where we are, as well as share some information in regard to our student supports as of our tragedies that have happened lately in our schools. And then I just want to share some ideas and some summaries on the bond. So we'll start with the district initiatives and goals. And our board president placed in the board update a request to purchase a couple of these books called Coherence, and they were shared at the DEED committee, the statewide committee, in regard to setting new direction in the state and really how, it was mentioned today, how do we raise all boats in our state, and what does education look like in the state of Alaska. And the book is by Fullen and Quinn, and it's called Coherence. So I'm just going to share some of those aspects with you in regard to that transformative I guess, information, taking from the goals for what we want for our children and what we want for ASD, and then what that work looks like. So in the book, there's just a little mini summary, and it's called A Coherent System of Change. And the purpose is really the direction, and that's what the board has set. And I know that when there was a concern earlier in the year in regard to assessment, board members were really surprised that there was a statement made that the board gave us this test. And I mean, certainly I can understand the logic behind it, but really what the board does is just set direction and set the big focus, and we're relentless on the focus of what we want for our kids and that rigor. We've heard some of that testimony today. We want the best, but we want it for all. So how does a large system that has so much variance create clarity around delivering education to our students? So we talk about our goals, the clarity, as well as we're focusing on leadership at the building level, our principals and our teacher leaders. We call them, whether it's a coach at an elementary school or department heads, whatever it is in special education or other ELL, you know, who are the people who support their colleagues? Then we look at another quadrant in regard to this change is called the Cultivating Collaborative Cultures, which is really creating a system in our district for large change. What does it look like when we focus our direction to reach our goals? So we zero in on the number of core goals, shouldn't have too many, do things right rather than do a lot of things. Deepen in the learning is understanding what our goal is, where we want to go, and then finally securing accountability. So these are the tenets for which were mentioned at the state level in regard to the president suggesting reading the book. So they're really, it's the system of change by Michael Fullen, who does large-scale change. It doesn't happen at the top, and it doesn't always happen at the bottom. There has to be a flow of information both ways, and he really talks about the purpose of the middle. And in regard to large change, when we have, it's really to the federal mandates that come down, what does that look like in districts? How do we take them and then really turn them into our own and make them look like ASD rather than just simply, you know, figuring out how to create a score on a test? It's not what it's about. It is about what do we want for kids here in ASD. When we look at those as compared to the overall district goals that we've talked about that are in our legislative items in regard to, we want high quality education. We want great customer service. We want transparent accountability. We talked about those big ideas for our community. When we look at the board's goals that were set, they are on our website. They've been the same since, I believe, 2011. We've said we want to look at performance, graduation rate, attendance, recommendations, safety, and efficiency. And these goals for the board are no different, really, than you would find in any school district. Most folks want that goodness to come. When kids leave us, what is it that we want for them when they enter our community? And the way that we've brought clarity, if you will, in Fullen's terms, is to create initiatives. And there's been a couple of requests to say, where are the initiatives and what are we doing to meet these goals? And I wanted to share that process, how that works in our system, but also to share for you as well as anyone that wanted to look at what's going on in ASD. The board's goals, which are adopted every summer and then revisited, are posted on the district website under the school board tab, under Destination 2020. And they look like these tabs, Goal 1 and 2. It's just a little screenshot. Under there, at the very bottom where it says Performance ASD FY18 District Initiatives, that's where you're actually look at what does that look like, the work? What are we doing to quantify that? If we were to say, man, we did, you know, we made these improvements, what does that look like? And on graduation rate, for instance, last year, the board had a focus. High schools really, secondary schools really had that focus, and that return on the investment that schools made, the people in the schools created that return for students. So if you take a look at the initiatives, they're set up as initiatives, they're called initiatives, and they're large scale work. So if we were to say, what does a dropout look like? It is someone who doesn't have the credits. And so in creating, how do we know early on before a student's a dropout, there's just some initiatives created. So we would want to increase the percentage of students with 5.5 credits earned at the end of the freshman year as compared to the previous year. So we're always looking at where are we going to set our goal and how are we going to reach it. The how part of that, however, will not be found in the district's comments on how to get there, because that's really related to each school. The initiatives will drill down to the work that's done, because each building would look different depending on their needs. We have some performance standards. Here's an example of elementary schools that we just take a look at. How do we measure improvement and this is just a reading CBM, which is actually using curriculum of reading to measure whether kids can read. Once they can read, our CBMs aren't that useful for us. I think it came up in the testimony today. They are a screener. They just say, is this on target with peers? The rate of cognition, because when you have to sound out a word, it takes a little bit longer than just knowing the word. But once a child reads, we've moved to other ways of knowing what they know. So from here, at the district level, we've taken those large initiatives, and then so what is it that the school district itself is going to do to support that? So here is one where it's better coordination with apprentice and vocational programs. Work with project management office to develop sustainable protocols for election, adoption, purchase, delivery training, instructional coaching implementation, MTSS pilots in middle schools and high schools. So this is some of the large-scale work that can support the initiatives. But the next piece is part of where the meaning is made. Again, here's we're past the first quarter simply because these are all related to schools. And we're using actual school achievement, school data presently, for schools and their leadership teams to decide what is it that we want to work on. What is it, where are the areas for which we can improve? So if there was a task for a principal or leadership, there would also be what's going to happen at that school. What does it look like at each school? So those are to fill in at the local level in engendering the focus from the top, because the weeds aren't where we can't direct. We're too far away from actually the learning that happens in the schools. So what does it look like at the school level? And how does that feedback loop go from the level of the classroom to the administration, fed up, fed down, and back and forth? It's really a give and take in regard to meeting those goals. Remember, 2 years ago, we've had the goals since 2011, but last year was the first year we actually wrote a plan. This is what we believe we can do to make changes in learning for kids. So each school creates those on their own, and they are, so the goals, initiatives, and then schools look at how are we going to look at our kids and our data to change our learning. And each of the schools would have those. There's 6 different goals that the board has set overall for the district. That's the 30,000 level. We can't do 6 things in a year in every school. We shouldn't be, you focus on very few things and do them well. So I might be a school that I want to increase, we had a high school talk today about they really want student engagement and the connectedness survey. They want to look at that piece. So Bartlett is using that as a driver for their outcomes. They might also look at attendance, or they might look at grades, graduation rate, or F. So each school is going to determine what can we do, what are we capable of doing, and then what are the goals that we're going to set. And so that's how it's fed back up from the level. So the initiatives really about what's going to happen are actually designed at the school level, given the large scale projects or goals for which we're working on. So with that, This is actually from the book in regard to the coherence in the system of reform. So it talks about there's top framers where the board has done that, the state has done that, the federal government has done that. They've said this is what we want to have happen. This is what we're doing at the federal level. It's about the funding we give you. At the state level, it's about the funding that is flowed through the state of what we're going to give you, that we want to see outcomes. And we've all heard from the state legislature, the problem with funding has a lot to do with what we're doing. That's always pushed back on us. So we need to strengthen the middle of our systems, and the middle of the systems is the district level, not the state level, to say how do we then get the work done with kids. And it really then liberates us when we're in schools to say, this is what makes sense at my school, we're going to move forward here. But the accountability is what makes it happen. When we close the door on any school or any classroom, we have magic being made or not. And so as leadership and as the accountability back to the public, how do we ensure that the variance that happens within classrooms and amongst classrooms, that the kids receive the learning that's expected by their parents and the community and the taxpayers. We've heard it here tonight. So the goal is to set that accountability measure. We all know what the focus is. How are we going to make it happen? So the top frames, and then it liberates the bottom to be able to say, you know what? Okay, I get it. Let me get there. And that essentially is kind of the making of really that book Coherence, about how it fits into large-scale change. That was mentioned earlier. And I can answer any questions. I think that was the last slide in that. There's any questions? I can change. Oh. So I'm going to give you some examples because I thought maybe you would ask some. So when we came up with an implementation, we have a reading program. It's brand new for everybody. And so it was implemented with the fidelity that was read. Well, the fidelity and integrity of what it's supposed to be are two different things. Fidelity perhaps is just checking the box, yep, I did this, I did this, I did this. Integrity is, what is this program really trying to do? And if it didn't make sense, then how are we going to change it? We had, in the middle level, when the information came up from the middle level at schools, it was immediately changed and addressed. Some, it wasn't. And it was the competencies and the understanding of what is allowed to change and what isn't. And certainly the coherence of understanding about what we want to do at the next level should be understood. And that we should work with it. So it needs to be fed up and fed down, and fed up and fed down. So when changes happen in the middle, it's been said, well, see, we're taking 2 steps back. And actually sometimes a step back is what's appropriate at the time because it doesn't make sense. If it's not making sense for kids in their learning and moving forward, we have to readjust. And so that's what that whole system is about in large-scale change, about moving up, moving down, moving up, and moving down. So you could liken it to map testing. You can liken it, we heard something on MTSS tonight. So then that's something for an administrator to look into and say, hey, we're supposed to have coherence here. It's supposed to make sense to rise all boats. We know what the data say. The data say that 50% of our kids aren't making it. 50% of our kids in some subgroups don't even graduate. If we don't do something, we're going to have the same results. So we're looking at what is it that we can do that's going to affect the change for kids, for all kids. And so this is some of the example. Okay. Yep, we do. So supporting ASD students, and I'm actually going to reference, oh, she's already here, Dr. Johnson again. We have had this year some sad news in regard to students being successful in taking their own lives. And in such, we have created an ad hoc committee that is taking priority. And I just asked Kirsten Johnson to come up and talk a little bit about that so that you know where we are and what we're doing on that behalf.
Thank you. Through the president, thank you, Dr. Bishop. So I wanted to give the board a quick update of where we're at with forming this committee. I have pulled in Paula Patterson. She's in charge of our school psychologists for the district. Diane Lemon, who is our director for counseling, and then Julie Vincic, who is one of our counselors at King Career Center, but who also serves on a state commission around the topic of suicide prevention and has lots of expertise in the area. The four of us are actually going to get started tomorrow afternoon about putting together kind of what our game plan is going to be. But our intent is to bring the superintendent a recommendation for what we're already doing well in our district, what we could add into our either peer education and or staff training in our district to address a really important topic that's in our community at the moment. Once we have our plan more solidified, my goal is to bring in student voice. I actually just visited with our student advisory board last week. Callie was probably there. And they're going to have some student voice representation on that committee. And I've talked to local organizations as well as Hospice of Anchorage, who deals with grief and bereavement on a regular basis. I've talked to some local therapists, and I've also talked to some parents who have either experienced this in their family or with their own student and are interested in helping the school district move forward and addressing the topic more readily. So that's where we're at. Our goal is to clearly not have to deal with this in our community at all, which I don't think is necessarily that's the ultimate outcome, but I don't know if we can necessarily prevent everything, but we definitely want to support our students because there's a lot of them that are struggling with this topic. So that's where we're at, and I look forward to coming back with more information in the future. So,
thank you. Any questions in regard to that? Okay, the next item is I wanted to provide the board some background and some information. Last work session, we had a discussion about 2018 bond, and the feedback was that the information wasn't delivered as promptly as felt they could. And I did share that literally we are working 2 weeks in between every board meeting to prepare. But we did have the survey that came back in between, as well as some added information, and just wanted to share this guidance of what's going to come back to you next work session. So let me start with the bond survey. The community bond survey did run at the end of September, conducted by the same group, the Hayes Group. Quite a few residents who said that they would actually vote in the 2018 election in April. And 60%, just so you know, are cell phones, so that lets you know who's having a landline anymore. And then the margin of error, of course, is about 3%. With that, the data came back that actually it improved from last year in regard to the willingness, if you will, of to support a critical component, school bond package. From this information on critical component, as well as what came from the last board meeting, it really was more about safety and that willingness to look at upgrading the safety of our buildings at this point in time. And what was presented was a multitude, kind of a choice, a la carte, but the feedback that after listening to the tape was, and if I'm incorrect here, just, we can correct, because we can create a bond, possibly in several different layers, if you will, in regard to costing it out, in regard to how do we support safety of our schools in those critical components, because that was what was significant. To be stated that it did not want to go into more debt, that the debt that we retired, that we should live within the means of the debt retired. So no new taxes. But the survey results also suggested at this time, which the kayak committee wasn't favorable last year, but that 52% is saying that we would support a multi-year bond if you didn't come back to us every year. That was different. I believe it was a new question asked, but the guidance last year was like, don't do that coming out of the committee. But here we see it from the folks surveyed by the Hayes that actually isn't as solid no. So this is for repairing schools or relocating students. This is something that we're going to work through in our community because 59% strongly support rebuilding schools and not relocating students. However, with the aging of our buildings, the lack of state support in bonds, it used to be a 70-30 or a 60-40 support where we paid 40 cents on the dollar or 30 cents on the dollar. It's 100 cents on the dollar. So it's a total community-based bond, whereas 3 years ago, we had more than 50% of those funds refunded to the city. So they did not impact taxpayers. Now what we do impacts all. We also are looking at a decrease in enrollment, over 2,000 kids in the last 10 years. Capacity in buildings, looking at our legislators, assembly members, looking for efficiencies. 3 years ago, we did do the Young report that said, at this point in time, with the way that the state funding is set up, that closing a school did not pay for itself because of this funding formula of it being a school site, and we've kind of reviewed that a little bit in the legislative priorities. But yet, we're asked to look at efficiencies. How best might we move forward? Because the more money we pay on buildings and additional staff, the less money that goes into classrooms. And we've heard that tonight. Class size, class size, class size. You know, consequently, what's wanted is a smaller class size directly affects the you know, if we pay people more, there's going to be less people working. I mean, that's what happens. And so less people working means higher class sizes. We don't want higher class sizes. But there is only so much revenue that we have to live within our means that's coming to us from the state, coming to us. Anchorage taxpayers already give 100% of what they can, already give 100% of what's allowable. It is literally in the state's hands, and we know where the state is at this present time. I mean, our heads would be in the sand if we didn't. So counting on that or not, so we reorganize, we, you know, change what we do, or we look at where money is going outside of the classroom. And it is in each new building I have a new administrator, I have a new custodian, I have a new secretary. So those are very valued positions in our district, but they're not in a classroom with a child. So therein lies some of the things that we could do. So we're working with the Western demographics on school start times. And I'm going to bring a proposal to you about what this is going to look like and have the gentleman work with us to share. Basically a large crowdsource work with the entire community in the pros and cons of school start time that's very inclusive to bring a recommendation back to the board, not for next year, but for the year after, because it will take this year to really be able to work through any concerns that we have. We're, you know, we have 50,000, under 50,000 kids, lots of families, so we don't want to make a rash decision. So that would be for fiscal year 20, which is not next school year, but the school year after. But in meeting with him, we talked about what his overall business is, and it's actually looking for efficiencies in analyzing data, where he creates school boundaries, he's closed schools, he's open schools. He makes large-scale community planning for cities as large as Detroit, Colorado, different places. What he would do is work with our communities, work with our data, and then discuss some of these potential savings for moving into the future that included some of the things for which I've heard from the board as well as assembly members. Could we, you know, it's almost like cutting your left hand off, close a school. Nobody wants to hear that. We've had people, and I don't even know if the present students, it is the lifelong tradition. I went to this school, my grandmother went to this school, my kids go into this school. So how do we make those things right given the economy that we have? and the economy. So he would look at and study large-scale data to come back, and some of those would be, and that's why we want to hold off on Inlet View and some other remodeling to say, not that it would affect Inlet View, but that it would affect anyone, to say, could we look at growth, our programs, boundaries. We had a program mentioned tonight about immersion. What's a better way to be able to use space and use all the monies that support programs in a more efficient fashion so that we can have more money go into the classroom? Multi-program campuses in single buildings. Is there an empty building that some of the rent we're paying on for any specialized program or charter can go into a building? Is there a middle school and an elementary school that if you built a whole new school with a whole new program could operate on a less cost, but everybody's getting something new rather than taking away? So it's really in regard to looking at a larger picture and then coming back, because I know that the board has heard over and over, just close schools and it would be fine. Just close a school and you'll be fine. The Young study said, if you have the same funding formula, you're not going to save money. But we know that's on the operation side, but the fulcrum's going to tilt a little bit when we have to invest millions of capital into a building. That's when it doesn't pay to keep a building that's 60% occupancy open. So we would say, or have it open, but move a school or a program that we're paying rent for into there. So he's going to come up with some suggestions. This is his business. I'd like him to talk to you. He will recommend up or down or several things. And that's why the recommendation for me would be come back to the board and only have components of safety for students in our present building on the bond. And then this would really be a 3 to 5 year plan of growth in ASD to see what that looks like. He studies all the extant data about our city, about the jobs, about where people live, about how they're living, what they like in schools. We heard testimony today, people will drive for a program. And so we want to have programs that are desirable. And then what does that look like when we put them together in schools? So, so far for the 2018 bond proposition, we want to come back again and get another bite at the apple with the board with better preparation to say, for your feedback, what we've heard so far is that safety is a priority. If there's other additional items in the request, if you could email me to be sure that we come with suggestions and examples that you would like to add in or take out, and that we would develop a proposal that would meet the board guidance and that we could prepare for the next work session. But my recommendation, I wanted to share a little bit about that Western demographics, because not only are we going to work in the school start time, but I would like to work with him in the bigger question that we're asked all the time of how can you save money on efficiencies to put more money into classrooms. And so it's another way to look for funds, because I am not confident that the state is going to increase. They have a year of flat funding. I mean, and we can say that we don't want it to be an excuse, which was mentioned tonight. I don't want it to be an excuse either. It's just my reality. Costs go up, the revenue doesn't change, we're in a bind. So how then can we take care of other larger issues that also take up money in a school, which is the support personnel in a school? So don't need to, I mean, the board can just think about it, email concerns. I would like to just come back with a bond work session about safety, keeping it under retired bond, and then work with you this year to talk about those bigger items, especially if there is a change in school size factor that then could hold us harmless to make some of those bigger changes without being dinged for a couple of years. That we could actualize the savings in classrooms before the funding is taken away for going from 2 schools to 1. You know. So that, just some out-of-the-box thinking, trying to create avenues for efficiencies to keep money in the classroom.
Do any board members have questions?
I do.
Ms. Marsett?
I have heard through Lance Pruitt and others that they are going to take a look at that the issue where small schools are receiving more money and therefore it's not productive, such as ASD, for us to look at those schools. That might be a topic that's going to come up before the legislative in June of this next session. Has anyone else heard anything that might be something that will come up in a bill or something like that from a representative?
The board members have any insights? Mr. Donley.
Well, I think we could make it an issue before them. That's my plan. I mean, we hopefully will have a more refined legislative agenda in the next few weeks here, and hopefully we'll be having some opportunities to interact with our legislators before they go to Juneau. I'm sorry if whoever has talked to some folks that says they're not interested in doing it, but that doesn't mean our city legislators shouldn't be interested in doing it and getting it done.
Okay. Yeah, that's just what I've heard from certain representatives. I think it's something we should pursue.
I will comment, Starr, that on our legislative priorities, that is one of the subpoints under our BSA is the school size efficiency. And that was, one of the resolutions that we're putting forward at AASB about having a grace period, a freeze on the negative impacts on our base student allocation if we were to do consolidations for efficiencies. But unless they're willing to do that, it would be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right. Well, we might even want to think about that as a separate issue under the BSA.
Thank you. Any other board
Madam
members?
Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say the foundation formula is not well designed for a declining population situation or a scenario where economic activity is on the downturn. I think the legislature has to recognize that. It was designed for the history of Alaska. There's been very few little blips there where, it's gone down since we discovered oil on Prudhoe Bay. It's happened, but it was designed to anticipate growth mostly. And I think that's a very strong point that needs to be got across to the legislature. It is the hardest task you'll ever take on, other than possibly things dealing with the PFD and the permanent fund, to adjust the foundation formula, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't do it, because it has to be done.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I do have one more.
Please, go ahead.
The other thing is, being a realtor, I do know that we're leaving the state, and I think that's common knowledge. We see it in our rental vacancy rates. Typically, Anchorage has been at a 2% vacancy rate. Our rental vacancy rates are going up to 7% and even higher, which is an indication that people are leaving the state. If our representatives continue to use the PFD to balance the budget, I think you'll see more people leaving the state. My question, and just food for thought, we don't even have to talk about it here, but I did see where Kansas won a suit against the state for funding. And I don't know if that's a topic we want to talk about at another time or just put it out there for thinking about.
Okay. Thank you. Any other? Yes, Mr. Holleman.
Just in general, from listening to the programs, and I'm torn because on one hand, I believe we do have to do things differently. We have to advance the profession, and a lot of times we need to look to national leaders or innovators and bring those programs to us. But I do think at some point we ought to measure the amount of time that people have to teach. And I know from what I'm looking at in middle school, I'm confused by what I'm seeing happen there. All of these things that on one hand are good for teachers take time, and everybody's only got so much of it. And I know in all the years I've got in, I never did like an index to track how much time I had just to teach, just to really work the profession, so to speak. But I feel like that's what we're hearing a lot from both parents and from people that are here about the contract, that their time to do what they're trying to do is slipping away. And I wish somehow that could be a package with a dollar number on it or something so that we could compare it to these other things. But I hope we'll look at that, and especially as it relates to the start of the year, not do things that have a big impact on it. That we, ultimately, that's when things are really happening. Whether they're happening as well as they could or happening great, we are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing when adults are working with kids on problems and instruction and learning what they're learning. And I want to sit through a meeting someday where we just talk about that, and that's the thing that we're somehow making happen more of. And I don't have an easy answer for you, so it's a little bit of a complaint without an answer, but I feel like we've got to force ourselves to put that on the table and make sure we don't hurt it any more than we have.
Thank you.
Tam?
Yes, Ms. Marsett.
I do want to say something else. It's hard not being there. Sorry I'm not there. I also believe that we have to sit down and talk about this, not just as a board, but with staff and teachers, and just open communication without fear, to talk about how we come together and how we do this for the best of the students and the teachers so that they can do the best for the students. But I also know having, I was such a teacher, but basically just tracking the achievement gap of the school district for quite some time, I know that we haven't made any progress in a long time, and we haven't tried anything different. And I know this hasn't been an easy going, and I don't know that this is the answer, but I feel good that we're doing something different, because you can't do the same thing over and over without getting the same results. Could we have had a better rollout? Maybe. Could we have listened more to our teachers? Yes. I think communication was a big problem with this. But I do truly believe, because it bothers me every night and every day when I know there's 50% of our students that are not going to make it through life because they're not making it through school. So we have to be brave, and we have to work on just trying something else. But we also have to bring everybody to the table and work this out so that we can do it together.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to move to our Student Advisory Board Representative Report. Katy.
Okay, so our last meeting was last week on the 5th, and we did have Dr. Johnson come in, as she said, to talk to us about the Suicide Prevention Committee that she is starting up. She asked for anyone who is interested who would like to be a student representative and a student voice on that committee to sign up, and we had several people sign up. We also had a presentation from Andrea Hatton, who is from the U.S. Attorney's Office, about an opioid crisis prevention presentation that she gave. She recommended that we go back to our schools and ask our PTSOs or administration to show a film called Chasing the Dragon, which is about the opioid epidemic in the nation and specifically in Alaska. We also met with Andrew Mergens, who is the Student Nutrition Senior Director, about some new items for the lunch menu, and we tested out some foods, which was fun. We also had our PR representative, Daniel John, give his presentation on his Start With Hello campaign. It's part of the Sandy Hook Promise, which is against gun violence, of course, and bullying and those sorts of things in school. It helps identify different signs that students could be giving off if they were trying to hurt themselves or others. And it starts with just saying hello to someone. One of the first challenges that you have, it's a week-long program, one of the first challenges is you just say hello to 5 new people. And then the next day you might invite them to hang out with you at lunch or something like that. So it's just really trying to get people involved and making sure everyone has a friend and someone to talk to who they can open up to. And I'm really excited to say that my own school, Eagle River, is starting the Start With Hello program, so we're going to be joining in on that. And our next meeting is on November 16th.
Great, thank you very much. Next on the agenda, I have our School Business Partnership Report. Bethany Fernandez.
Hello.
Good evening.
First, I want to say thank you for having us here and being able to represent school business partnerships. I want to thank the school board for all of your support, both in your time, as I know many of you have served on our board as representatives, as well as giving to your time to the classroom in our different schools. So I appreciate that. I also like to acknowledge the community and how much the community supports our program. The community is our program. So I think I want to acknowledge the community for that, which includes over the last 2 years, 759 individual partnerships with our schools. So it's a very large number. Traditionally at this time, we have given our annual report to the board. Unfortunately, I am the bearer of bad news that this year we do not have an annual report. At the time when we traditionally do our annual report, we had a staffing hole and did not have an executive director. So that did not happen. That's where I come in as the new executive director. Having started in August, I previously served on the School Business Partnership Board for 2 years and was an ASD employee with the Career Technical Education Department. At this time, I want to take the opportunity, though, to tell you what we're going to do to ensure that we do have an annual report in the future and that the report and the data that we present to you is accurate with good data and representative of our actual programs. In order to do that, we have 4 focus areas this year. One of them, our first one, is strengthening existing partnerships. We know that the community and the business world very much functions as a part of our schools and in support of our schools, supporting various programs, and we want to strengthen those. I am a goal-oriented person myself, so anytime that Dr. Bishop brings up goals and initiatives, I get really jazzed, and I leaned over to my colleague and said, that's exactly what I've been talking about. One of the shifts that we are working towards in school business partnerships is to put some language around what it is that we're doing in our partnerships and aligning that with school goals. I think it's a very important shift. I think that we have done it here and there and that it happens just naturally, but for us to put some language around, start putting language around that will allow for principals and school staff to be able to see that support and that they, as you all talk about constantly, unfortunately, the diminishing of funds, that really the principals and teachers can start to really see the community and the business world as a support to their classrooms, filling in some of the holes and some of the, being a support to help reach those initiatives and those goals. Our second focus area is to increase community awareness. And I think this is a common thing. You know, I go into a room and, oh, who has heard of school business partnerships? And it's usually about half of the room will raise their hand, which is great in my opinion. But I would like to see every hand raised. I think that the more people who know about it is the more people who can support our students in the end. We also want to improve our own effectiveness as a board. As I'm sure, just like the school district has goals on efficiency, we have the same. And the last one is we want to ensure financial stability for school business partnerships, to ensure that we can continue to support students, to support classrooms, to support our teachers and what they are doing. One additional change that I want to bring up is the biggest one I think that will affect our annual report is that we are going to be shifting how we collect our data. In the past, we have sent out surveys and asked for, you know, businesses to volunteer to respond, to ask for principals or teachers to respond voluntarily. We are going to be revamping our database and actually acquiring we haven't quite landed on it, but some kind of client management system of some sort. The school district has been so kind to lend us their professionals, and we're working with Andy Kloop to identify, utilizing his expertise, identify the right system for us, so that we're not just holding contact information and that kind of stuff electronically, but also that we know what events are going to be happening and that the number of hours and the number of events are being put right there in the system, and that that data can be aggregated easily and made available for all to know what's going on, and that we can know that each business has a great return on their investment. So once again, thank you very much.
And I want to open it for any board questions. Any board comments? Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move to board conference and committee reports. I don't believe we've had any conference attendees recently, but we do have some committee reports, and we'll start with finance. Ms. Snelling.
Finance Committee met today. I want to thank the board members that were able to attend. The topics, we did an audit report review on decentralized student activities, bond debt information brief, and monthly financials. We look forward to our next meeting being November 6th, 2:30 to 3:30, room 150.
Thank you. Mr. Donley, Communications.
Communications had a good meeting last month. Our next meeting is tomorrow here at 11 a.m. to 12. We handed out that first draft earlier during this meeting of our legislative priorities, and we'll be continuing to work on that to improve that material and make sure we have some really good material available to our policymakers. We're still in negotiation with the Anchorage caucus regarding a time for that meeting or luncheon. We pretty much established we want to have it at their building, the LIO, the new LIO over there in Midtown. But the next special session has now been scheduled for October 23rd. That's just really close. And as we get close to that time, we'll be able to, it'll be easier to finalize the final date of that. There's a lot of talk back and forth that it might be a very short special session, but then the SB 91 stuff has come up and it might be longer. So that's causing a lot of flux and uncertainty about when they might or might not be available. Our staff, the district folks, have been doing the monthly information documents that the board members have been getting, which I hope are being very useful to them at community council and PTA meetings. I think they have a lot of great information in them, and we're going to keep working on that and refining those. And I spent quite a bit of time talking with the folks over at the Institute of Social and Economic Research over the past few weeks, and it's been very interesting. Originally, they anticipated it was going to take them like a day or 2 days to get back to me, and they spent about 3 weeks talking over there among the folks that had actually done the last school cost differential study, and the one that was done in 2015 for teacher costs statewide too. The head of ICER and I talked a few days ago, and she said, well, we've reached a conclusion that it's probably worth it to do a new study. We think there's some new elements we think would be appropriate to include within the school cost differential assessment, and we think it's clear that that the 2015 study shows that Anchorage is undervalued for our teacher component, which is the single largest component of it, the school cost differential. But there may be some other costs that have gone up in other areas that might offset that by some, and then finally it might be something, and this is just a total ballpark on there, between 2 to 3% differential, but when you look at how much money Anchorage gets from the state, 2 to 3% is millions and millions of dollars. So it might seem small to ICER, but it's big to us. And then she said, we think we could get it done for about between $125,000 and $135,000, which in a way surprised me. And so that's what's out there. That's, if we were asking the legislature to do this, that's all we're really asking for is, and it has been, I think it's been 17 years since they did one, and it was clearly, the first one that was done after 10 years, and it was clearly anticipated it was supposed to be done every 10 years, so they're way behind on doing it. So I think there's a very, very strong argument that they need to get going on it. Actually, some discussion has been going on about maybe it might be worth it to this community to jumpstart that process somehow. And that's for future discussion. That might be something that the Assembly and the school board might consider even thinking about. So that's my report.
Thank you very much. Ms. Plunkett, governance.
Governance met September 13th and went over the 4,000 policy, which is personnel, and that will be on actually it's on our agenda tonight, isn't it? So, but the next item is Wednesday the 11th. It's the student section, which is 5,000 that we'll go over, and then for Mr. Donley, I thought I would let him know that November 9th, the next month, we will have the 3,000s and the 7,000, and that's the 7,000 is the one you're interested in. So that's our items the next 2 months. But this Wednesday, it's from 3:30 to 5 in room 150, which is the 11th.
Thank you very much. That concludes our committee reports. We will move to our consent agenda.
Restart there or rejoin.
All of us?
I had to restart.
I need to have all board members rejoin because as she added the resolution or the memorandum 64, you have to cut out and rejoin again. So please take a moment to do so. Okay, Kathleen?
Are you ready? I move to approve the consent agenda, item number 2, August 21st, 2017, work session and executive session minutes. Item number 3, August 21st, 2017, regular session minutes. Item number 4, September 11th, 2017, work session and executive session minutes. Item number 5, ASD memorandum number 48, personnel report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All board members, please vote. And the motion carries 7 yeas, 0 nay. We move to our action items. Item number 1, there are no student hearings, so that is not on action item.
I move to approve ASD memorandum number 45 and adopt the attached resolution designating October 19th, 2017 as lights on after school day in the Anchorage School District.
It's been moved and seconded, and we now move to public testimony on action items. And similar to our non-action items, the way we proceed, as you just saw, is first it is introduced by the Vice President, and if seconded by another board member, I open the floor for public testimony. If you signed up in advance or indicate you're interested in providing testimony, I will call you to come forward to the front table to speak. You have 3 minutes to talk, and you will see a timer on the screen to your left to monitor the time remaining and inform you of when you need to conclude. And after all testimony closes, I open the floor for board discussion, followed by the student board representative vote, before finally calling for the official vote. The voting results will be displayed on the screen. And I do have someone signed up, but I'm sorry, I cannot read your writing. Can you identify yourself, the person who's signed up to speak on this item?
It's James. You can read that?
Hi, James. Smallwood, now that I know it's you.
And I'm not a doctor, too.
Maybe you should have been. Go ahead.
Well, I thank you very much for this opportunity for the board to do this. I was actually pleasantly surprised when I came in here and I saw that resolution, just because it was just a month ago. I mentioned it to, I believe, Mr. Anderson over there, and we were talking about the fact that over there at Wonder Park, the lights were off during the nighttime, and it was a major concern for me, especially when we deal with safety and especially in that area. Not saying that there's a lot of bad things are happening in that area, but however, it can, and just having the lights off. So I'm happy to know that this is something that's been taken up, and I hope that the board will support turning on the lights, at least a little bit of the lights on the Anchorage School District schools. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else in the public wishing to testify on this resolution? Memorandum. I'm closing public testimony, opening it for board discussion. Closing board discussion. Members, please vote. I'm sorry, student advisory vote.
Yay.
Now you may vote. Fast fingers. And the motion passes unanimously. 7 yeas, 0 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 46 and adopt the attached resolution designating October 16th to 20th, 2017 as School Bus Safety Week in the Anchorage School District.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. I'm opening for public testimony. Seeing none, closing public testimony, opening board discussion. No board discussion. We're closing that. Student advisory vote.
Yay.
Board members, please vote. The motion passes 7 yeas, 0 nay.
I move to approve ASD Memorandum Number 58 and adopt the amended AASB resolutions and support the new resolutions proposal for directing AASB initiatives in 2016-17.
17-18.
17-18.
It's been moved and seconded, opening for public testimony. Closing for public testimony. Board discussion is now open. Closing board discussion. Student advisory vote.
Yay.
Board members, please vote.
Before we vote, this says 16-17 as well.
We'll be reissuing that, and then please vote again in a moment. Do we have a new screen? Sure. Is it not coming It's not coming through? Voice vote?
It's open on here. Can we do a voice vote? Elisa's
Kathleen?
I voted.
Oh, it came up on your screen.
It just came up.
Ms. Marsett?
Yes.
Mr. Donley?
Yes, no.
Okay. And the motion passes 7 yeas, 0 nay. That concludes our action items. We now move to non-action items. And are there any items, including the third one that was added to our agenda earlier in the meeting, number 064, or are these items that board members would like to pull for discussion? Mr. Donley?
Oh, I'd just like to, I guess I could explain number 64. We talked about this. I handed out information to the members at our last meeting. This just is a follow-up on that. It would simply request that our delegates to the upcoming meeting, the Alaska Association of School Districts School Boards meeting, advocate or seek revision in the current rules. And I'm not sure how they would do it, but just however is appropriate that they would do it, to change the Anchorage district membership from 5 to 7 delegates.
Okay, any questions? Okay, this is a non-action item. It will come up at the next meeting as an action item. So if you have any further questions, that would be the time to pose those. Is there any future business or future items that board members would like to have considered for the agenda?
Yes.
Ms. Marsett?
I'd like an update on the bus barn, on where we're at.
Okay. Potentially in the superintendent's report? Okay.
Yeah.
I do need a second person to show interest in that, for that to be put on the calendar. She's interested in having an update on the moving of the student transportation facility, also called the bus barn. Okay, so we do have two. So we'll put calendar that for next meeting.
I have one other one.
Yes?
I am interested in knowing what would be the dollars that we would need to bring our classroom sizes back to our recommended levels that we put out before.
I would second that.
Okay. Dr. Bishop?
Madam President, I would need some clarity in looking. Is it in regard to the staffing levels or the class size research? I mean, because staffing, the ratios were a staffing mechanism, a metric, not necessarily a class size top, like a target. It was, I mean, it literally was a mathematical formula to create staffing at a school. So I don't want to, I want to be able to, excuse me, provide the information. And so was there a time that ASD had recommended class sizes to where we said we want kindergarten at this size? Because certainly the metrics and the ratios of class sizes are metrics for staffing, not class sizes.
And I'm going to...
And it might be staffing that you provided us, but it was where kindergarten was 20, I believe, first grade was 20, I don't know. But
I'm going to interrupt Starr.
Us with the number of students per class.
Starr, are you referring to the Picus-Oden study?
No, I'm referring to what Dr. Bishop had given us.
For staffing at the schools this year for the budget last year?
You know, I'll get that for you, but and I'll send an email with that. But basically, what I'm looking for is what are the dollars that it would take if we were to go to the legislative and ask them what it would take to get our class sizes back to the size that is recommended for.
I got it. So that, okay, so that would be working on the communications committee last year, that data that was recommended there?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Mr. Holleman.
And this might be the same numbers, but about 3 years back, Mark Foster had some charts, little blocks that represented the class in every school, and they were nicely color-coded. The ones that were close or under the desired objective were green, the ones that were slightly over were yellow, the ones that were over by a certain amount were orange. And I don't know exactly what the cutoffs were he was using, but it was a great graphic for kind of getting an idea of where we were crowded. Those cutoff numbers, I think probably OMB can probably provide those, and that might be a nice reference point because we were just somewhat overcrowded then, and that might be back what we would love to get back to.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else from board members? Thank you. Then we move to, again, an opportunity for public testimony on non-agenda and non-action items. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to testify? I'm closing public testimony and moving to school board and administration comments and communications.
Madam President, I do want to echo what one of our folks in testimony said, that today is Indigenous Peoples Day in Alaska. And the dominant narrative had this, as many of us were growing up, as Columbus Day, but in understanding the first peoples of Alaska, the first peoples of the United States, we talk about Indigenous Peoples Day. So I'm really proud to say that our schools celebrated that today. Also, parent-teacher online scheduling opens today. Parents may now schedule student conferences online for the end of the first quarter. Alaska Middle College is accepting applications for the spring semester, and that will close on November 1st, and due to the structure of that school, mid-year is appropriate because it's by semesters. And then, of course, already mentioned by our board president, October 19th at 10:19 for the month and the day, ASD schools will participate in the 2017 Great Alaska Shakeout Earthquake Drills, driven by our safety department in support of schools to get those drills done. So I just want to share that we are participants in the state in that event. Thank you.
Mr. Holleman?
And I just want to emphasize, and I think I understand the fiscal reality for the state as well as anybody, but I've grown to the point where I feel like even as a small child, with every spring you go to the legislature and explain what they're doing wrong. It seems that way. It seems like it's been going on that long. I guess actually for me it's only been 10 or 12 years. I don't want to say that if we're flat funded we'll be okay. We'll survive, and we will run a district in some fashion. But I really do want us to go into the coming session being sure the legislature understands the kind of pain and the kind of shortchanging in quality that we're forced to impose on kids if they continue to flat fund. And maybe it turns out that's the only option they feel they've got. But I do want us as a district to be a loud voice to say it's unacceptable in a state that really does have some options left to it. They can't change the revenue picture from oil, but they still do have options about how they manage us, and they're choosing to put us in a state of distress. So I just want to emphasize that and say that is what I will try to do in the spring on behalf of students and teachers in Anchorage, and I hope everybody on the board voices that same concern as well.
And Tam?
Yes.
I'd like to kind of ditto that, because I know a lot of people say that being on the school board, we need to understand the predicament of the state and where we're at. But our job as school board members are to advocate for our students, and that's our first job. It's not the job to advocate for the legislators or the representatives. It's our job to go to them and advocate for our students who cannot advocate for themselves.
Thank you very much. I have one final piece that I'd like to add here, and this is in memoriam of a number of students and former students and district folks. First of all, we've had a number of students who've committed suicide recently and in the past, and I think we need in a moment to take a moment to recognize the great loss to our community, to our schools, and to our families. Additionally, this summer in July, a Service High student, Private Sergeant Hanson Kirkpatrick, was killed in the line of duty. I understand Service High School has a memorial scheduled on Tuesday, October 10th at 1 p.m., where his name will be added to a plaque that they have at that school of former students who've lost their lives in the line of duty. Thirdly, we had a graduate of Diamond High School killed in the tragedy that unfolded in Las Vegas a little over a week ago, Adrian Murfitt. Also a great loss to our community. And finally, last month, Sue Linford passed away, a long-standing member of our community who, when I was a student in this district, served as president of the school board. Also a fellow Rotarian for Dr. Bishop and myself. So we've lost some great ones, some in tragedies, some by other natural causes, but nonetheless, I'd like to take 1 minute now in memoriam for these losses. Thank you very much. Any other board comments? And I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Oh, I forgot the teacher. This teacher.